almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes us out before you make it. Yeah, you start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is thriller night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast that's about to strike. You know it's thriller night, and fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. You hear the door slam and realize that there's nowhere left to run. You feel the cold hands and wonder if you'll ever see the sun. You close your eyes and hope that this is just imagination, girl. But all the while, you hear a creature creeping up behind, and you're out of time. 'Cause this is thriller night. There ain't no second chance to kiss a thing with 40 eyes, girl. Thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. Night creatures crawling, the dead start to walk in their masquerade. No, there's no escaping the jaws of this alien tonight. This is the end of your life. Come on. Thriller night, 'cause I can thrill you more than any ghouls would ever dare try. Thriller night, so let me hold you tight and share a killer thriller tonight. Thriller night, girl, I can thrill you more than any ghoul would ever dare try. Thriller night, so let me hold you tight inside a killer thriller tonight. I'm gonna thrill you tonight.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stenches in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver. For no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween. I hope everyone is doing well out there, and welcome to another edition of the Rambo Academy for Wayward Writers on Twitch with Cat Rambo, our Halloween edition, which we are calling today Writing Spooky and Suspenseful. I cannot wait to be able to give way, as the British Parliament would say, to Cat, which I will do in just a second. But before I do so, let me remind everybody about ways to support us here on the channel. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to follow us here on the channel. Please check out the YouTube channel with !ArvTube, where you can see past broadcasts of this stream and indeed past classes that Kat has been kind enough to deliver here on this channel. !Arv tweets will get you over to my Twitter, where you can follow me there when I go live, and ! Tweet will let you retweet the stream, and please do that because that would be really awesome if you were able to do that and let people know about the stream. !Arv Chord is the Discord channel where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams, And you can find out about all about that on my calendar, which is the schedule is arvanelaron.com. On the financial side, !ArvTreon is my Patreon, currently sitting at 302. Really is the financial backbone of the channel and makes a big difference if you folks are able to support it. I want to be able to increase the money that I can pay people, and sometimes pay people at all if I haven't been able to so far. So please consider supporting us over there. The shop, !Arv shop, with merchandise from Adventures in Middle-earth and from Infinity and Beyond is also there. Soon to be Aspergenesis stuff there as well. And last but certainly not least, that sub button right above the video window will also help out. And that sub button is going to be useful today because, as was the case previously, I'm going to switch over and let Kat introduce herself, and I will let everyone sort of say hi. And then I'm going to let subs ask questions. So the way this works is we're going to go into sub-only mode. Subs will be able to talk and ask questions. The rest of the folks will not be able to talk and ask questions during the class or right afterwards. When Kat is done and leaves, then I take over. I'm going to be playing a spooky game tonight and then doing my usual Edgar Allan Poe reading. When I do that, I will take sub mode off. But I do think it's important to do this because we are trying to be able to build, work towards monetizing this. This stuff should not be free. And so everyone has free access to watch and listen and absorb Kat's wisdom. But this will be an opportunity to go a little further than that and actually ask questions as stuff is going on. So please consider doing that and jumping on board, because that would be lovely. All right, I'm going to unmute myself so Kat knows that we're about ready to go. I'm going to unmute her, and then I'm going to, with the power of studio mode transition, zip. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. It all worked perfectly. And we are all here and ready to go. You can see Octocat has arrived. And by the way, this is as determined by chat. Chat has made the decision that this is the costume that Kat would be wearing. And so it is our great pleasure to welcome Kat Rambo back into the fold. Kat, so good to see you. How are you? And yeah, I mean, now, do you want to tell the people how close the vote was? Like beating out, like what this beat out to?
Well, it was amazing to me that within seconds of having posted this, like 17 people had weighed in on this highly important matter.
Yes.
The choices were my Cthulhu mask, which is a full face Cthulhu mask, this hat, Mermaid Queen, because I do have a Mermaid Queen outfit, and steampunk was the other. And I'm not sure what I would have done for steampunk, but probably would have found something steampunky around the house.
Did you not wear that?
It was off by percentage point.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because
Yes.
I was gonna say, did you not wear that Mermaid Queen outfit at a Hugo or something?
At the Nebulas.
At the Nebulas. Okay. All right.
At the Nebulas. It has a tiara and a velvet gown.
That's right.
And it's just fabulous.
I remember. Well, the octopus head looks very great. It's awesome, and I think it is. I was going to make some octopus joke, and I don't have one. It's tentacular. There we go.
Tentacular.
There's my joke. But yes, so it is time for our class, Writing Spooky and Suspenseful. So I'm going to get out of here, switch the room over to sub mode, and I will be back when I'll be here, but I will be back on the screen when you are concluded. So with that said, chat, my great pleasure to welcome in Kat Rambo, very gifted writer and award winner and series commander for Tor, former SIFWA president, and of course, most importantly of all, the player of Petrosinis on Aspergenesis. That's the most clearly the highlight of her career. But no, it's my great pleasure to welcome Kat on board. So Kat, it's over to you.
Hello, everybody, and happy Halloween. Yes, I am the player of Petrosinis, a woman with a large hammer, which I think we're playing in just a couple weeks from now. So I'm excited about that. I'm just back from 2 conventions. I'm back from Multiverse Convention, the very first Multiverse in Atlanta. And I'm back from Surrey International Writers Conference up in Surrey, British Columbia, where I took my mom. So that was lots of fun. And in fact, one of the things I've done is kind of stolen some notes from Hallie Efron, apparently presented in a room before me, and did a presentation on suspense. And so I found her notes and was like, oh, look, Hallie Efron wants to prepare me for my class to teach for Greg. And so I stole Hallie Efron's notes, and we will incorporate them in today's class. How do we write spooky and suspenseful? I wanted to give a quick shout out to 3 spooky writers that I recently read. One is Tamsin Moore's Gideon the Ninth, which is a fabulous book, basically lesbian necromancers in space. I don't know how that could be bad. Mira Grant's Parasite trilogy, which I think the books are Parasite, Symbiote, and Chimera, and those are terrific and spooky in their own way, particularly if you don't like bugs. And finally, the latest Best American Fantasy, edited by Carmen Maria Machado, a wonderful writer in her own right, has also assembled a lot of really great stuff, including plenty of spooky things. So if you want to write spooky stuff, I do suggest that you read spooky stuff. And I've said before that as writers, don't let being a writer destroy your joy in reading, but do read it once for pleasure. And then when you really love it or really hate it, go back and figure out why. And with spooky stuff, as with anything, when you're trying to kind of focus in on a specific thing, go and find some of the masters of that craft and some of the people that you really love. And one of the nice things about horror is people are writing all over the place, from very visceral to very subtle to very weird. While some people can ask questions in chat, here, I'll also remind my Patreon folks that you can ask questions over there. I noticed that people are liking the hat. I like the hat too. I think it's awesome. So let's talk about ways to be suspenseful. What I'm going to do is give you 3 categories and a few tools to mess around with each. And then I'm going to talk about some things other writers have said about writing spooky and give you a couple of resources that I think are super handy. So suspense is an unanswered question. So it is something that your reader wants to know. And that is the key, is not just asking the question, but making your reader care about the answer. And so what you have to do is make that question matter very much to your protagonist. And we've talked before in the class about characters, about how what a character wants is the most important thing that you can know about the character. And here, making that tie in with this unanswered question, or making it the question, right? How are they going to get whatever it is that they want? This is part of building suspense. And a lot of times with suspense, it's not a question of whether or not we know something's going to happen, although certainly that kind of suspense is great, but sometimes we can know something's going to happen, and it's just a question of getting to it. And I think there's so many horror movies that depend on that, right? We know that it's going to be awful. We know that terrible things are going to happen. It's just when or where is the axe going to start falling out of the closet and hitting people in the head. So one way that you could go wrong, I guess, as writers, you have to basically ask your question at the beginning of the story and then let the reader's desire to find out the answer carry them through the story. And if they are identifying with the protagonist and caring about the question because the protagonist doesn't know the answer, for the love of God, don't make it at the end a thing that the protagonist seems to have known all along. That is just irritating, and that's going to make the reader feel manipulated. So ask a question, make the question matter because it matters to your protagonist. Make the question something that the reader does not know, right? That the reader will keep reading in order to find out. And don't make it a trick question. Don't make it something that the reader feels manipulated or tricked by. Okay, pausing for questions about the unanswered question part of suspense. All right. So another thing about that question is that we are building anticipation, right? We know that the answer is coming. It's just a question of how we get to it. we basically want it to pay off. And I think that one of the things that you want to do with horror is kind of make it tense and then loosen a little and let people take a breath and then build it up again. So sort of like establish your tension and build it and then kind of release and reflect and then kind of keep moving upward though. Ways that you can sort of increase your suspense include slowing down. Whenever you kind of stop the camera and dwell lovingly on something, you want to make sure that you're dwelling lovingly on something that is important, right? You don't want to sort of dwell lovingly on a random detail because that's going to be sort of disconcerting. But the more that you focus on this seemingly innocuous detail, the greater the sense of anticipation. And, you know, it's a little bit kind of the more you pay attention to something, the more sort of payoff juice it's accumulating. I am minded of an incident in my Dungeons and Dragons game where the players were almost killed by an animated table. And it really was a horrific battle that involved several critical roles and the paladin just getting the bejesus smashed out of him. And so after that in the campaign, whenever I really wanted to sort of freak them out a little, I would begin describing the furniture in the room with just a little bit too much detail. And they would all be like, start poking at it and worrying. So kind of spreading it out is going to be something that you can do. And of course, you can sort of adjust the speed and slowness of your dialogue with three basic controls, right? The length of paragraph, the length of sentence, and the length of words. Long paragraphs, long sentences, long words, slow things down. Short paragraphs, short sentences, short words, speed things up. And that is your beautiful, wonderful dial that you can use. And I urge you to vary things. All right. Another way that you can kind of build anticipation, and I think Stephen King does this beautifully, is you can have your character engage in internal dialogue. They can be thinking about it. They can they can be thinking about how scared they are. They can be thinking about how awful the consequences are. They can be thinking about the fact that that door sure does look like a big gaping mouth ready to swallow them. You don't want to kind of have a whole story that takes place inside a character's head most of the time, but certainly a good bit of dipping into the character is going to make your reader feel their terror. And certainly if you can provide some of the physical sensations of terror, and I urge you next time you're really scared to pay attention to your body, but if you can add some of that, your reader will really be there with the person. Another way to kind of up the suspense and up the anticipation is the ticking clock. Anytime you've got a deadline, anytime you've got something's going to happen at a particular time, you increase the suspense. There is that sort of, that at some point the alarm will go off moment. And I hope, I don't know how you folks are. For me, if I know that the alarm is going to go off, there's that kind of terrible, I cannot sleep because I know the alarm is about to go off sleep. And then you can try and replicate that in the story. Okay. And here in the notes that I stole from Hallie Ephron, there's a good quote. There's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. I'm actually not reading these word for word from Hallie Ephron's notes. I'm just using them as a prop. I think it's really funny. Hopefully you do too. All right. Another way that you can make things spooky and is with the atmosphere. And you can do all sorts of things as far as sort of creating an unsettling sense of place. And I think this is one of the crucial things about horror. Often the weather is terrible. Often it is dark. Often it is shadowy. Often things are amorphous. Things are unclear. Visibility is low. This is one of the classics. Think about the Stephen King, The Mist, right? I think that is one of the classic unsettling sense of place. And you can do this by making it actually super, super weird. I'm thinking of Stephen King's, oh gosh, the one where it's the people that go to sleep on the plane and they wake up and they're basically in yesterday, and there's basically things that are sort of rolling up yesterday, and it's a kind of weird sense of being behind the backdrop, behind the scenes of things. And I think while the book itself is not great, that scene where you see the world being dismantled by the sort of the keepers of yesterday is a really interesting and unsettling scene. And then what becomes clear as you watch these things go about destroying yesterday is they're going to come for the characters at some point, because they begin rolling them in that direction. Aha, my Patreon folks are supplying the title, which is The Langoliers. Yes, not one of King's best, but I really did love that particular thing. I don't know why I feel compelled to tell you I don't think it's one of his best. It's because when King is good, he's so good. He's just delicious. And I think he does some of the things that we're talking about wonderfully. Anybody that's taken a class with me knows that I'm going to tell you to mind the senses. And this is particularly true with horror. It's particularly true with visceral horror. I'll pretend my godchild is watching and not swear, but mind the F out of the senses, and not just give us the senses of what's around your character, but give us a sense of what it's like to be in their body. One of the things that we like about horror and thrillers, and this is kind of unsettling, is that we don't mind characters in pain, because we identify with it because we've been in pain, but also there's that sort of a little psychological maneuver where it's somebody else in pain and it's not us, and so we can experience pleasure in it because it's a story and it's not happening to us, if that makes sense. Another way to make the world feel unsettled and spooky is isolate your character. If your character is alone, they have no resources, they have no friends, they have no allies. This increases a sense of menace. Make them feel surrounded. Take it a step further. Make it feel as though eyes are all around. And you can take something innocuous and just make it so it's out of place. When something seems ordinary, but it's where it shouldn't be, that can be spooky and unsettling. Okay. I'm looking to see if there's any questions. Priya is asking, how do you write horror when you're a wimp? And I think that's an excellent question. And I think, you do have to read a certain amount of horror. And certainly I would read it in the daylight. I would not read it late at night, just before I went to bed. But I would be careful. I know one of my favorite horror stories, which is in my collection, Neither Here Nor There, it's basically, we were watching a terrible, terrible movie, but it had one really scary moment in it. And I was like, wow, that one moment was really scary. How would I redo the movie so it was really, truly as terrifying as that moment? And I got so scared I had to get up out of bed and go write the story, which appears in Neither Here Nor There. I'm trying to remember the title of it. I don't know. I will find it at some point. But it's where the movie was paranormal, and there's a moment where the demon is basically running along the ceiling, And it actually is kind of freaky because all you see are these invisible footprints on the ceiling, and it's moving so quickly that it's startling. But the rest of it is just terrible. Okay. Atmosphere. Looking to see what else I wanted to say about ways to increase suspense. Some more tools that you have. I've talked about slowing down. I've talked about taking your setting and making it right at the kind of the classic dark and stormy night. Make it unsettling as far as sensory detail. And again, physical sensation, dizziness, nausea, pain, motion, all of that are important. It was really interesting to me. I went recently through a haunted house when I was in Atlanta. And went with a friend of mine who's a huge haunted house devotee, and was like, this is one of the best haunted houses in America. Let's go. And one of the things that was interesting to me is that one of the ways that they made you feel unsettled and the way they kind of scared you was they often fucked with the footing. And so you'd be going across a room and it would be basically like they put lumps of cotton batting under fake grass. Or this particular piece of footing is made of pieces of metal that shift around underfoot. Or one was a giant metal plate that was slowly spinning in place. And it was really interesting because it was supposed to make you feel more scared just because you were off balance. And I think if you want to think about that, that is one of the ways that you can make your reader feel scared, is kind of keep them unsettled, keep them off balance, keep giving them things that don't quite match what they're expecting. And one of the people on Patreon, Francis, is suggesting that one of the keys to writing horror when you're a wimp is describe the feeling of being scared. Oh, okay. And Priya, if you've been feeling like you're not scary enough, try to scare yourself. Think of the scariest things that you can think of, but also remember that what frightens you may not be what frightens somebody else. I am not particularly scared of insects. And so I was describing an encounter with an insect to somebody, and I became aware that what I was describing to them was horrifying. And I just thought it was kind of cool. So mileage may vary. This is one of the reasons why beta readers are really good, because often when we're feeling we're not sufficiently X in our writing, it may be that that's not actually what's happening. We are our own worst critics. So put up a couple of scary stories. Let's see how that goes. I'll tell you. Talked about internal dialogue. One thing that you can also do that increases suspense is play around with the idea of Chekhov's gun. We've talked about Chekhov's gun in previous classes. That is Chekhov's maxim that if there is a gun on the wall in the first act, it must have gone off by the third act. And there are objects that when you introduce them into a story, they introduce a sense of danger, right? If there is somebody talking about the fact that there is a bottle of poison under the kitchen sink, according to storytelling conventions, that poison is going to play a part in the plot. It is going to at some point get uncapped and drunk or used in some way. I will say the problem with the octopus hat is that it's quite warm. You wouldn't think, but it would be. Anyway, so yeah, dangerous cliffs, poisonous berries, loaded guns, bombs, police officers, all sorts of stuff like that is going to increase the situation, suspense. And of course, anytime someone dies, we are upping the suspense. Raising the stakes, right? Anytime that the stakes become higher you're going to increase the amount of suspense, not just affecting a single person, but affecting an entire family, affecting not just a family, but an entire village, not just a village, but a city, not just a city, but the world. Okay. All right. So I wanted to mention some other writers and what they've said about suspense. And I actually went to one of the classics. I went and got, H.P. Lovecraft's supernatural horror in literature. And this is actually H.P. Lovecraft pontificating about literature more than it is anything else. But I did find in the last chapter, The Modern Masters, in which H.P. Lovecraft is speaking of his contemporaries, a few interesting things that I thought were interesting about what he calls supernatural writing. He says, serious, weird stories are either made realistically intense by close consistency and perfect fidelity to nature, except in the one supernatural direction which the author allows himself. So either they can be like super close to our own world, but with like one deviation. Or else, this is option number 2, cast all together in the realm of fantasy, with atmosphere cunningly adapted to the visualization of a delicately exotic world of unreality beyond space and time, in which almost anything may happen, if it but happen in true accord with certain types of imagination and illusion normal to the sensitive human brain. And he's got me up to the point where he's like, certain types of imagination and illusion, because I'm just like, you have lost me, H.P. Lovecraft, at that point. But basically he's saying, with supernatural stuff, either it's very realistic and there's one divergence, or it is just absolutely off the wall. Everything is fantastic. He talks about some others, and he did mention, I thought this was interesting, he talks about The White People by Machen, M-A-C-H-E-N, which I had just seen referenced in T.L. Kingfisher's The Twisted Ones, which is a terrific book and well worth picking up. There's another thing that I wanted to say here. Oh, and this is interesting. He's talking about Henry James. Or no, not talking about Henry James. Talking about Montague Rhodes James, my apology. Long fond of telling spectral tales at Christmastide. Says he has 3 very sound rules for macabre compositions. A ghost story, he believes, should have a familiar setting in the modern period in order to approach closely the reader's sphere of existence. I think that's interesting, right? It needs to be in a setting close to your reader, which I don't agree with at all. Its spectral phenomena, moreover, should be malevolent rather than beneficent, since fear is the emotion primarily to be excited. Oh, okay, maybe, although maybe a little dose of beneficent is interesting. And finally, the technical patois of occultism or pseudoscience ought to be carefully avoided, lest the charm of casual verisimilitude be smothered in unconvincing pedantry. And I think he just means don't get too technical. Don't come up with a lot of gibbledy-gook stuff, which seems reasonable, keeping gibbledy-gook to a minimum. I also wanted to point to another, I've got 2 more books that I kind of wanted to look at and talk about. If you are not familiar with this one, Phyllis Whitney, who was a romance writer, has Guide to Fiction Writing. This is no longer in print, so you're going to have to go either on Amazon or find it in a used bookstore. But she's, in talking about suspense, she says that one of the things that you want to think about is purpose. He says, purpose is something you must consider deliberately to make sure it exists in every scene. It always leads to action and makes the reader want to know what will happen next. Of course, there should be uncertainty about what will happen. The more unexpected, unforeseen, and unpredictable the outcome, the stronger the story interest and the stronger the suspense. And so it's basically this idea of purpose is that your character, your protagonist, should have something that they want, should have something that they mean to do. So it's not just enough that they have something that they want, but they should have a drive to get to it, right? It shouldn't just be something they're like, oh, I sure would like it if this happens, right? They should be like, okay, I've got a plan for getting it. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to do X. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to do Y. And so the suspense then lies in thwarting the purpose. And so you just keep thwarting them over and over again and building suspense. Okay. Checking my screens. Okay, one more. This is one more book that I will recommend that I think is actually, this is a game book. It's called Stealing Cthulhu by Graham Walmsley. I hold that up again. And I don't know if it's still available. I supported the Kickstarter, as one does. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, where he talks about Lovecraftian horror and says that if you're going to be writing Lovecraftian horror, remember that it doesn't have this sort of structure where it's sort of like build and release and build and release and build and release, sort of gradually climbing upwards. It's basically more sort of very slow smolder, and then suddenly, like towards the last 7/8, suddenly goes wah and rockets off into weird land. And I was thinking about that, and I think that actually is one of the things I like about H.P. Lovecraft. So don't be afraid to just, you're stuck, rocket off into weird land if you want to. I think it's awesome. Yes, and Francis is telling me that the Walmsley book is available at Drive-Thru RPG. It's a terrific book, and it's particularly good if you are interested in running Call of Cthulhu, which is one of my favorite RPGs. All right, so we're at the point where I usually open it up in the last few moments for questions, and I will natter on about writing spooky if people don't have questions. And Greg, can we hit it back into non-sub mode when you get the chance, so anyone in chat can ask questions should they wish to? I know one of the questions is going to be, where did I get the octopus hat? And the octopus hat was made for me by Christine. It has a little label back, says knitted by Christine. And it is indeed just so freaking fabulous. And I keep taking it with me to cons and never get a chance to wear it. So thank you for giving me the chance to wear it. With spooky stuff, often one of the things that works very well is unreliable narrators. And if you're not familiar with unreliable narrators, that basically, I'm going to say it's a narrator who's unreliable. It's a narrator that you can't trust, right? Not everything that they're saying is necessarily the truth. And it may be that they are trying to lie to you, or it may be that they just don't know any better, or that they have been deceived. Again, I know this is a Lovecraft heavy episode, but there is one of his stories where basically it turns out the protagonist is the monster, and you don't know it until the end. Francis is saying, please talk more about unreliable narrators. And I will say, unreliable narrators are one of the joys when they're written well, because for the reader, one of the pleasures of that is that you kind of, you know better. You get the feeling that you are kind of in on the joke, and that you understand sometimes what's going on better than the narrator themselves. There is an intellectual pleasure in sort of piecing together what's behind the scenes. One of my favorite stories of all time is in the Stephen Graham Jones's first collection, which I have, but I'm sort of tethered to the computer by my earbuds. But it has a story called Father, Son, Holy Rabbit. It is an unreliable narrator. It is one of the best unreliable narrator stories I have ever read. And basically, your unreliable narrator is the little boy who does not entirely understand what's happening. And you don't understand what's happening. And boy, the minute you understand what's happening, it just slams into you like you wouldn't believe. It is just one of my favorite short stories. Shannon McGuire has a short story that's in a collection that's all circus and carnival uh, stuff. It is the first story in the collection. It is an unreliable narrator because you do not find out something incredibly important about the narrator until quite a ways into the story, and then suddenly everything changes when you learn that. And I think that is one of the joys of an unreliable narrator as well, is being able to take the sort of the irony of sort of reading it the way that they want you to be reading it, and then sort of reading it the way that is just kind of more truthful. I think that is a really interesting and pleasurable kind of story. We read spooky. Why do we read spooky stories? I read spooky stories because I like to spook myself out a little. There is that pleasure of knowing yourself warm and at home and safe, and yet reading about terrible monsters. I particularly on Halloween night when we feel there might be ghosts wandering around. Any other questions that people have about writing spooky? Oh, I love Stephen King. And I think Stephen King is terrific. And I think that his book on writing is one of the best writing books around. I highly recommend it. And one of the things that I really appreciate about that book is that the first half is autobiographical, and it is very honest about his issues with addiction and kind of the books that were written, like Tommy Knockers, when he was struggling with cocaine. And Tommy Knockers, I think, has sort of the ultimate image for a writer, right? It has the magic typewriter where you just think at it and it writes the story. And I'm just like, oh, Stephen King. We all want the magic typewriter. No, Stephen King is wonderful. And he's also one of the people who's really celebrated the short story in America. And I really appreciate that. We don't have as many people celebrating short stories as we could. So you should read more short stories. Up with short stories. Other questions? If you like Stephen King, I highly recommend the writer Joe Hill, who Stephen King has written with and who is actually King's kid. But Joe Hill has books that I think very much have that Stephen King feel, and sometimes they overlap into the Stephen King overall universe that he's created, which I think is really neat. That's one of the things I really like about him, is that all of his stories kind of tie together at the root. And it's one of the things that I've tried to do with some of my stuff. I don't know that they all tie together, but a lot of the stories tie together in places that may be unexpected. You have questions, Arb, or you're gonna? Oh, there we go. The mix-up of spooky and horror. Well, so when I'm using horror, I'm talking about a specific, what we call a genre, a particular kind of book, like science fiction is a genre, and fantasy is a genre, and horror is a genre. And so those are mostly about where to shelve the books in the bookstore. Do we put them in science fiction or do we put them in horror? While spooky is an adjective that could apply to any book and just means scary or suspenseful. I hope that clarifies that a little. Did you have questions that you wanted to ask, Art, or are you? Yeah.
Unmute. Yeah, let me. I do have some questions. I was waiting to see how this all played out. It's really, as always, really interesting. So, So there's me. One question that I wanted to ask was, well, actually, let answer garlic questions first,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then I'll talk about mine.
So Garlic Tofu's asking, horror is more related to the level of hope or positive income than the darkness of outcome than the darkness of the material. Do I agree? Well, one of the things I heard at a convention I was at recently was that horror always has an unhappy ending, and this is what kind of distinguishes it. And I don't agree. I think that horror often has a hopeful
Yeah.
outcome. As far as the level of intensity, I guess I would say sort of like light horror versus dark horror. It seems to me that really sort of dark, dense, painful, very intense horror is where is what I would put at one end of the spectrum, and then I would put kind of lighter stuff like Shaun of the Dead or other ones. To be horror really, I don't know about sort of causing the reader pain as sort of causing the reader a sense of unease. And I guess do we call them the same? For instance, same horror, the evil gets concrete and sometimes you can punch it in the nose. I think that's pretty good, actually. And horror does often take sort of the badness of life and personify it and make it into something like demons or intelligent rats or that sort of thing.
You know, I want to come back to this question of
Okay.
of onrushing of gradually increasing menace, because it occurs to me that one of the things that really makes horror, it's the thing that Poe was a master at. It's the thing that I brought out. I was looking for this book, which is that I have here, which is The House in the Borderland, which, with all apologies to Lovecraft, I think is better than anything Lovecraft ever wrote. I think Hodgson is that good. This book is, and there's other examples of it. There's one, The Purple Cloud. I think I don't think that's right. I need to find the name of it anyway. But it's both of those books, and a lot of these books, and certainly King is great at this too, master the question of pace. So my question is, how do you develop, especially in a short story, develop pace in such a way that it keeps the reader engaged while still building up the sort of slow burn that you want for something to be effective, as opposed to the sort of very tight thriller story that's very quick paced and very, a lot of horror, it seems to me, is more languid, and yet somehow draws people through. So I'm wondering how you I guess kind of decide what the sort of balance is between pace and detailed suspense building, which might not be about pace in the case of horror.
Well, I think certainly kind of as far as like pacing, you do want to mix it up and be like, okay, I've got some short, fast stuff and some language stuff, and just sort of make sure that you don't have too many language sections in a row. But as to how you figure that out, reading out loud is the single best way to figure this out, because reading out loud, you will be reading it and you'll be like, holy shit, this section is so slow, and you will kind of be like, oh, I need to condense this because I have been going on and on and on about this corridor for 5 paragraphs. And actually I only need, like a sentence or whatever. And so there's something about reading it out loud that will let you figure out pacing stuff beautifully. But that's also something that I ask my beta readers to give me is like, where are the points where they lost interest? Where's the point where they're just like, oh my God, is she ever going to get out of this corridor? Right?
Come on. Yeah. Yeah. That's quite true. If there's one kind of theme more suitable for short stories, prose or horror, is it all the same: short stories, full novels versus themes? If I'm understanding your question correctly, Genli, but tell me if I'm wrong, I think what you're asking is that horror may work better in the short story context than in the novel context, and are the principles Kat's laying out the same for short stories and novels? Is that more or less what you're asking, or am I getting that wrong? Because I want to make sure I asked the question correctly. As opposed to, okay, so in other words, as opposed to science fiction or fantasy sort of purely, or so-called literary fiction and stuff like that.
Oh. So it's like horror more suited to short fiction?
I wonder if any of that, Kat, is related to the fact that one of the great short stories writers in English is Edgar Allan Poe, who, you know, really like created, I mean, he's essentially the creator of detective fiction. It was innovative for so many things that maybe that's, you know, his influence was so great that may have given people that idea, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I think, I mean, certainly, like if you have a like horror tends not to be about like complicated philosophical ideas,
Mm-hmm.
whereas science fiction may be about complicated ideas or complicated technology or whatever.
Right.
And horror tends to be much more about emotion, tends to be much more about physical sensation,
Right.
tends to be much more about fear. And I think that is better. That is going to work better in a short form.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, if it's not enough to carry a novel, right? It has to be sort of part of a character's progression or part of a character's story arc for it actually to have enough to make it a novel. Whereas a short story can just be about like moving from a state of unknowing to knowing, or you know, something like that.
But I mean, and also this is where those arcs, Genley, become that much more important, right? Because the micro arcs within a novel, these rises and falls, also helps you to kind of maintain that moment of sort of one moment of horror after another. You know, certainly King's The Shining does that. Which, you know, my father, you know, studied in various academic courses and so forth, certainly does that. And there are other examples where that kind of thing, that's sort of those little sort of micro arts and rises and falls.
Well, in Rock God's mentioning the chapter in Matheson's I Am Legend, which is a great chapter on a couple of levels. One, because the fact that he kind of stretches it out so long makes you start to wonder. Like at first you're like, of course he's going to get the dog, and then you're just like, well, maybe not. You know, this is taking so long, maybe not. And I think whenever you can make the reader kind of like, shit, I don't know. And I mean, to me, one of the great moments in Serenity, right, the Firefly movie, which I'm now going to spoil for anybody that has not seen it somehow since the 15 years since it came out. But surprise, he kills a beloved character. And there's a moment where, and it is easily, I'm going to argue, the most beloved character. It is the nicest character in the whole crew. And when he kills that person, you're just like, holy fuck, maybe they're not going to get out of this alive. You know, and it's just like, whenever you can do something like that, whenever you can just sort of shock the reader's expectations like that and make them go, oh, I was planning on X and I'm not sure of that. I think that's going to be unsettling and wonderful.
Yeah, there's nothing that's better for getting your audience, getting your reader audience engaged in the belief that they don't know if they can rely on something or not. Is there a role, by the way, Kat, you just made me think about this, for a way to make exhaustion engaging? You know, because part of what it seems to me happens in some, you know, of the best horror works is this just sense of physical and mental exhaustion that is set in with the characters that has added to that sense of menace, because they just can't keep going and they won't be able to survive much longer and they just can't hold out. You know, I'm wondering if there is, because I could also see that being very tedious. So is there a way to produce that effect without being tedious?
Certainly you can provide physical details, right? You know, just, and you don't have to be like, you know, breath by breath and sort of each one is exhausting. But the other is I would kind of like, I would use a lot of little details and a kind of slow trickle in order to kind of show the sort of like slow exhaustion. And I would actually make it a moment where it is kind of like slow and grinding and you know, takes at least a page of just exhaustive detail. But I would make it very rich sensory detail too.
Yeah. One question I wanted to ask to follow up was also about differences that you might see between science fiction oriented as opposed to fantasy oriented horror. The Alien, obviously is a mixture of both. Are there differences or not?
Yeah. I don't think there is a difference.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of okay. So like in science fiction, the monster is created by technology.
Okay.
Or aliens or technology or alien technology.
Technological aliens.
Whereas the other one, right? It's poltergeist. It's demons. It's
Okay, so it doesn't really make a difference.
No, and I'm thinking about the Mira Grant books that I just finished, because they're basically the villains there were tapeworms.
Yeah. And I guess they're part of what creates that effect in science fiction is the unsettling quality of the creatures that you face, which is the case whether you're dealing, I suppose, with aliens or technological, forward things or not.
Do you remember? I'm thinking back. It's original Star Trek, and it was the episode I think called "Devil in the Dark."
Oh, my mother's favorite, of course. Yeah, the Horda.
The Horda, and it was, and I remember just being terrified of that.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
And
freaked
then
my daughter out too, actually.
Oh God! And then at the end, you're just like, oh, they're protecting their eggs, and it's just, oh my God.
It is honestly, and I mean, I'm a big Star Trek original series fan, but that I feel like that is peak Star Trek because it does everything well. This feeling of science, it's a purely science fictional concept. It's based on the question of technology, but it relies on empathy and understanding creatures beyond oneself. The fact that Kirk and Spock prevent these guys from just killing the Horda and being like, this is what it's just such peak Star Trek. Really, really good. But yeah, it did freak my daughter out a little bit.
Oh God, yeah.
When I was young, watching those with my dad, some of those ones were like, they freaked me out a little bit.
Well, we
Doctor
don't realize...
Who has that problem too sometimes.
Yes.
So.
Well, I mean, we don't realize that sometimes, like, just how kids can read these narratives and just be like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, all right.
Well,
it is time to wrap up, but I wanted to mention something to
yes,
people because we just changed a new thing in the Academy. We now have basically a Discord community, Crit Club, where people can come and exchange information and motivation and cat pictures. And if you're interested in checking out Crit Club, support me on Patreon. Or if you can't afford it, there's lots of memberships and scholarships. And we're particularly looking for writers of color or quilt bag authors or writers who are disadvantaged in some way. Know that you would be a valued member.
And can you give us and I because I cannot bring the command to mind at the moment. What is the link for the website that would link us to some of this? Like just
if you
the Rambo Academy or your website for this, whichever.
Patreon.com /catrambo.
.com whack, did you say?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, that's Microsoft Talk. The slash.
Oh, patreon.com /catrambo.
Like once you've worked in the tech industry.
I almost started to call that cat cam, and I'm like, that's not
cat cam.
That's not going to be the case. Okay, I think I just put the link up there, but let's check and make sure that I did that right.
Yes, that is perfect.
Okay, lovely. Because I'm going to make sure that
I'll put another one in there, which is if you go to catrambo.com whack Academy, there's a list of the classes, and this weekend classes that are coming up include Mike Stackpole, 21 days to writing a novel. Remember, we've got scholarships, and we're happy to have people in there gently. And also Doug Smith is doing a class on reprints. So if you are a writer selling stories, Doug will tell you how to sell them for more.
Very, very neat.
And I'm doing the Writing Hope Hunt class. So if you're interested in that, that is the other.
Very, very neat. Yeah, this is really interesting. And I it's interesting how much of what you suggested is really has good applications for any kind of good writing. It's similar to understanding a particular subgenre really helps you with writing in general, and learning about the importance of character detail, character identification, and pace is a pretty good thing to be figuring out for writing in general. So that's really helpful to be able to have that info for sure.
The reason I like teaching these classes because it makes me think about craft all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's super handy.
Absolutely. My listening into this really helps me with like masterclass. Like, and I've been, of course, tweeting this out, and I'm going to tweet, in fact, this last one right now. About all this as well. So this was amazing as always, Kat. Thank you. Thank you also to the Patreon folks that were asking questions, and to my folks too. And I am going to stick around and do a little bit of spooky game, and then finish up with our annual reading of Edgar Allan Poe, as we always do on Halloween. But I'm going to let Kat go. Kat, great stuff. Thank you so much as always. And I will speak to you for Espergenesis, which will be coming, as we say, soon. And then, of course, next month back here with another class from here.
Awesome.
I suppose it'll be writing thankfully, right? It'll be all gratitude and thankfulness in fiction, and like how to the importance of turkeys and cranberry sauce in descriptions, and
No, you were supposed to supposed to ask questions at the end. It's totally swell.
Yeah. No, we opened that up again, Genly. So you're good. You were totally
all right.
Thank you, Kat, so much.
Take care, my friends. Talk to you soon.
Jack, we get some love for Kat. Thanks, Kat.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Good stuff. Yeah, that's always a great pleasure to be able to do those. And I want to be able to find, as many ways as I possibly can to, try to get more ways to hopefully get, more attention to these classes. Obviously, she has the classes that she does elsewhere, but also just to be able to get more attention and stuff for her Patreon and for other things that I do. I mean, rather that she does on my channel related to this class, because it's really a gift that we get this once a month, and I'm trying to come up with other ways that that makes that, just more ways to sort of support that, because she really it really is awesome, and is not sort of automatically something that just everybody gets a hold of this. I mean, this is really very kind of her to be able to do this, and so I want to be able to get more support for that, and hopefully we can do that over time. So as I transition back over into that, that's not going to quite do it for us for tonight, though, because we have two things that we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to do a little bit of a spooky game. Oh yeah, Carpe Glitter. I forgot to ask her about that. I saw that too. Shoot. Yeah, definitely. You should be checking out Carpe Glitter like immediately. You should check out Carpe Glitter at all costs, because yeah, all cat stuff should be paid attention to. So yes, I forgot that. So then my printer has lost its mind. But yes, so I want to make sure definitely that that we get some focus on that. I need to make sure we put up a link on that too. All right, so I'm going to be playing a little bit of a spooky game for you folks, and then we're going to be doing two readings from the great Edgar Allan Poe about this stuff, and hopefully it'll be all sort of within theme. So let me start then with the game that we're going to play. I'm still waiting on the third of the Debat series from Kat. It is en route. I'm sure that it is on the way. So you need fear not about any of that. Okay, so let me pop up what I've got here. Where is my? Yeah, let's pop this up first. All right, so what I have got here that I'm dealing with is I have a few possibilities. Yeah, I know. My camera is very jiggly because right now my printer is going at top speed. Because I don't know, apparently my wife has decided to print the entire book, the entire manual of therapy at all costs. Wait for it. Greetings, Commander Dunsel. There it is. Okay. All right, that was a lot. All right, so let me take a look and see here about possibilities. Nope, more printing. All right, now part of the problem for me with Halloween, or one of the issues that sometimes comes up for me with Halloween, is the fact that, as you folks know, I do not like horror games. So I don't like, I just don't like a lot of horror games. I don't like jump scares at all. I like no jump scares ever, and I don't like people that are just kind of like, they're like, oh, it's fine, it's not that scary, which is the exact same equivalent as saying to somebody, oh, I have, here's this delicious food that I love, and you're like, yeah, I don't like that kind of food. They're like, no, it's delicious because I like it, and you're like, so let me bring you back to the part where I said that it's not about you, it's about whether I. So that's the way that I generally am. So finding a game, but I do like spooky. So finding a game that sort of fits that kind of spooky description, that is a whole different sort of metal. What on God's green earth is this library? Has anyone seen the new library like Steam arrangement? What is this? What the hell is this? Right, there you go, Second Obs. Seriously, Steam? What the devil is this? What is this? Wow. That's dreadful, I think is the way I would put that. Dreadful. Okay, all right, well, let me try to not worry about anything with that. Okay. Let's see. I think, so we have a couple of possibilities here, but I think probably the one that I'm going to try. Well, I will admit that I don't like horror books much. I mean, the reason I don't like them is not because they're not great. It's because they scare me and I don't like being scared. So when Kat was saying that thing about like, that, oh, it's, this is great because, I like feeling safe, and I don't feel safe when I read them. I just feel scared, and I don't like being scared at all. So that's, but again, that's because they're doing their job super well. That's not in any way because it's bad work or none of that at all. It's just, it bothers me. Like I get freaked out by it, and I don't know. Yeah, it's a safe scare, but see, it's not safe. That's the thing. It's not safe at all because I get nightmares and yeah, it's not safe for me. So that's part of the problem. Okay. I think like this is one of the things that I said about like Thief. Now I loved Thief. Thief is one of my favorite franchises of all time. But every Thief game, they have to have an asylum level. And I'm like, why? So instead of going from like stealthy, sneak through, then everything is like zombies and jump scares. So that's normally when I get to the asylum level, which they have to have in Thief for some reason. I don't know why. Normally what I just generally do is I will turn on the lights. I will turn on sports radio or something like that. I will literally stand up and just run and aggro everything in the free place because I hate jump scares. And so if I just do that, then I know that everything's coming at me. Roar, I don't care. And it's the exact opposite of how you're supposed to play Thief. But I'm like, I'm not, that's how it is. Otherwise, I just have to not play those games. So I just wish they would just stick to playing the bloody, just do what they're supposed to. Okay. I think what I'm probably going to do here, because I have different possibilities here, and I think I'm going to choose between two possibilities. So one possibility is picking, where are we here? One possibility is picking Sunless Sea, which I have often played on Halloween because it definitely fits the bill, fits the description. Okay, good night, Genly. So that's that. And then the other thing that I considered the possibility of doing was thinking about, the other thing was, yeah. So the other thing, sorry, I was just looking at some description of something. Good night, Genly. So the other thing I was thinking about was checking into another one of the choice stories. So let me, because right now I have choice of robots, but I wonder if I had another choice game. No, that's choice of rebels. goodness, we were just never going to stop with the printing. Choice of... Yeah, I want to update it. As soon as I pick something, I will do that. Ah, here we go. Oh, it's by... I have to choose this. Okay. Okay, I didn't even realize this. This is perfect. Oh my goodness. I can't even believe... All right, this is great. This is great. Okay. This is a good one. All right, this is a good one. This will work perfectly. Okay. I agree to the terms. Yes, whatever. Purchase. Okay. Let's install it. This will be quick because it's largely a text game. And there we go. Okay. So let me introduce to you, folks, the act you've known for all these years. Okay. Let me introduce to you this game, which I will then update. I'll update this right now. Okay. Capture specific window. Does that work? No. All right, that's fine. I don't need it then. Okay. Here we go. What? What is this? Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You're kidding me. Why can you not do that? Is there some hardware acceleration thing? Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I know. It's just the horror. I'm a little surprised, frankly, that it doesn't do window capture on these. It's a little annoying, but that's all right. Fortunately, I can work around it. There we go. Okay. Okay. So thanks for the resub, Dragon. Thank you for the resub, Dragon. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, man. So welcome to Choice of the Deathless. Now, I will tell you all the premise of the game. So the premise of Choice of the Deathless is as follows. This game basically is described this way. Battle demons and undead attorneys and win souls to pay back your student loans. At the elite demonic law firm of Varkath Nebuchadnezzar Stone, you'll depose a fallen god, find romance, and maybe even make partner if you don't lose your own soul first. Now, the reason that this is so cool is not only that it is a choice of games, because we have played Choice of Games before. You might remember that we played Choice of Robots, which is one of the games that we played here. But the other reason that this actually works really well is that this is written by Max Gladstone. Now, in case you're wondering who the hell Max Gladstone is, Max Gladstone is the same guy who wrote, and I'm buying this. Max Gladstone is the same guy who wrote, co-wrote with Amal El-Motar, friend of the stream, and of course, member in good standing of Adventures of Middle-earth. This is How You Lose the Time War. So she did that, and so that gives us Max. Oh, god damn it, display capture. So that gives us this to actually work with. So thank you, EVB13. Okay. All right, let me now change the Twitch. Let me change the Twitch Twitch dashboard. And then we need to get some music going in here. And we'll play this for like, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes. And then I'll play and then I will play, then I will do the reading that I promised you, and then I will head to bed. Okay. So ARV streams of the Deathless, followed by 2 spooky readings. All right. Right. Okay. That would be readings with an S. Thank you. Readings with an S. It's about student loan debt. I call that horror. I actually did a reading with someone, or I was on a panel with someone who did a reading about this whole book that's about student debt. And it's kind of, yeah. And there's an actual phrase for this. Okay. All right, I have updated the list. It's warm in here. Okay, I have updated the list officially. All right, so that should be adjusting any minute now to Choice of the Deathless. Yes, okay. All right, let's get some spooky music here that fits. Let's see, spooky soundtrack. Okay. Give me some good spooky soundtracks, folks. Spooky game soundtracks. Not horror soundtracks, please. Spooky soundtracks. Although I do have one possibility. You know what? I have one. I actually have one. I have one. And if you can remember the opening theme to Metroid, that is solid. American McGee's Alice is a good one. I just thought of one, though. This is the soundtrack for What Remains of Edith Finch, which I haven't had a chance to play yet, but I've heard good things about, and which kind of fits, I think, the description of sort of spooky without being, like, completely freaky and freakazoid and all that kind of stuff. So, okay. So, can everyone hear me? Is the music too loud, or is it work? Can you hear me over this? It's good? Okay. All right, here we go. Now, normally I would allow chat to vote on this, but I'm not going to do that in this particular case because I want to, because I just want to be able to play this without setting up ARVBot and doing all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to be doing a reading after this. So this particular case, I won't do that. That's your favorite game of all time? Nice, dude. All right, well then. Heard many good things about Edith Finch, so okay. Lovely. All right. Okay, here we go. The sky over the demon world is broken. Lightning licks the strange geometries of cloud. Around you rises the demon city Akergath, warped crystal and flame, thorns and razor wire. And this is the nice part of town. Gods, you hurt. Your skin's a burned ruin. Bones in your ribs grind when you breathe. Your suit hangs in tatters from your body. Your enemy stands before you, a towering figure of glass and knives. Cackling madly, he raises one hand. Dark power crackles along his talons. The battle's taken almost all your strength. Your craft, your own power, stands at ebb. Yeah, well... trying to get this set up so that I can actually... There we go. Hopefully that's a little better. It's not supposed to be... It doesn't have to be right up on top of my mouth, or it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be so that people can hear... Okay. Is that any better? Test 1 2, test 1 2, check 1 2 2. Is that better? Maybe? Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay. Up, down, yes, no? Butter? Okay. The battle's taken almost all of your strength. Your craft, your own power, stands at ebb. If you don't win this thing soon, you're done. Okay. I wait for my enemy to attack, then redirect his power against him. As the blast scythes towards you, you bind it with your own craft and gas it back against your foe. To cast such power in mid-flight is almost impossible, but you manage a virtuoso display of finesse and improvisation. If you survive this, you'll return to the hidden schools and rub this moment in the face of every professor who ever claimed you'd not amount to anything. If. The bolt shatters your enemy's chest to crystal shards. They fall like rain and reflect your battered face 1,000,000 times in miniature. But before your very eyes, the crystal melts again and flows back to heal the wound you made. He stands before you, mighty as before. The effort's almost exhausted you. You can't turn another hit like that. Let me say something. Try to stall him. You scream into the whirlwind, "Others will come after me! And after you!" He laughs. "Whoa, who do you think cares enough about you to risk their life for vengeance?" Ashley Wakefield. Sure, I don't know who that is. Ashley Wakefield. Ashley will. Perhaps Wakefield will only squirm less before dying. He closes his clawed hand into a fist. You crouch ready for the attack. He's powerful but arrogant. If you just hold out a few seconds more, you'll find some angle, some way to beat him, as long as you can keep it together. Then claws of light and power strike you and you shatter. I just got an achievement. You're dead. Great. Your mind comes to pieces and the pieces tumble, sharp, spinning. Seconds come unmoored from seconds. Shards catch and reflect images of a once familiar life. Your past spinning out of reach. You have to fight back. Have to stop him, defend yourself. So hard to think. What does thinking mean anyway, outside of time? You scramble amid the shattered, jagged facets of yourself. They cut your fingers and blood flows into memory. You must remember. You must fight. You are... Hells, who are you anyway? There must be an answer here amid the silver slivers and glass confetti among the kaleidoscope shapes. If only you could grasp it. You don't even have hands with which to grasp. Or a body, for that matter. No. You have one. You remember. You are a man. You were a man. Your name, if you could just remember, names tie lies together, knit memories to memories. And your name is... something else. Weyrlich. That's only part of it. Weyrlich. Shepherd. I should call. What's up, Dark and Wolf? How you doing, man? Good to see you, dude. Viralish Shepherd. Shepherd. No. Viralish. Viralish. That's right, man. That's right. Like the fourth year in a row. Viralish Cannon. How did you get here, Viralish? So many alternative paths, so many options. Dream shards, timepieces. Childhood, the first stirrings of power. You caught a falling star in a dead field and held it burning in your hands. Smelled the sweet iron of space and the world's heat as fiery fingers crawled over your skin and into your flesh. I released the star into the sky. The star twisted lifelike in your grip. You raised your hands and opened your fingers and offered it to the sky. Burning with hidden wings, it rose and rising spread more until it shone triumphant in the dark. You closed your eyes but saw the star still and more by its light, a vast net of souls in exchange, a pulsing network of life and story and bargain and consequence. Every note of the web whispered to every other. As one they sang. You passed out, but when you woke, that vision remained, your first sight of a deeper world. You would sing one day with that world, with the stars. But first you had to grow up, and growing up presented its own challenges. You were poor. A scrapping farmer's child on the edge of the desert, your people survivors of the God Wars. But city lights always beckoned behind the horizon, and your infant stirrings of power grew. You set your sights upon the hidden schools where professors who have slain gods in single combat teach their dark craft to the next generation. You developed in those conditions from child to man. Here's a cutting, tumbling shard of lips and skin, a first kiss, a girl I knew. A bright afternoon, a brief rest, a pressure of lips and hands and bodies. Neither one of you was very good at kissing or at anything else you tried, but it was a start and it was sweet. You wonder what became of her. You'll never know. More flashes from your years at the hidden schools where you studied the dark arts men call craft. A century ago, you would have been burned at the stake for learning these skills. How to raise the dead from their graves, how to hold the power of the gods in your own hands. Then the God Wars happened and humans won. The hidden schools rose in defiance of divine authority, and life became a lot better for people who chose to twist natural law into their whims. People like you. You see, you remember... Hours and hours of studying... No, sneaking through and around the rules. You climbed the sevenfold tower in a thunderstorm to see the light that played among its many tines. What you saw there you've never told a single soul. Professors warned you to stay within the rules, not to meddle in matters you lacked the context to comprehend. Yet you were the first in your class to wake a corpse from slumber. Admittedly, it attacked the freshman dorms and started a zombie plague that almost infected the whole school. Nobody tied that to you, though. At least, not officially. You learned the hidden names of Professor Halcyon. You found 6 of the 7 immaterial volumes of the Great Library. You think you caught a glimpse of God, or a god at least, in the outer reaches of the astral plane. Once. You were probably a bit unhinged, but damn if you weren't unhinged in style. The hidden schools were a realm of darkness and study, but no one ever accused the students there of monastic discipline. What pleasures did you indulge in? What love, what faces, what bodies reflect in the falling shards of what used to be yourself? Wanted women and found women who wanted me. It's between that and there's no time, but... They were strong, they were brittle, they were brilliant, they were short-sighted, they were beautiful, they were unformed. In short, they were young, and so were you. But the process was fun for all involved. And then you graduated and went to work. Next chapter. Krieg Tower rises like a black needle over the sprawling Shikha skyline. To the east stretches the great waters, slate gray, broken by white chalk-line waves. Below and off to the west, broad gridded streets map the earth between buildings the size of city blocks, and beyond these lie older red-brick neighborhoods that never quite recovered from the God Wars. Varkath Nebuchadnezzar Stone occupies the top 20 floors of Craig Tower. Your new office, your first office ever, is a cubby on floor 35 toward the lower bound of VNS territory. It's empty but for you and the few personal possessions you're moving in. A single box piled high with craft workbooks, and on top of them a few teetering personal effects, including a daguerreotype of your graduation. You look so proud. You set the box down and sag into your chair. You hear the subtle shift in the box and turn in time to see the picture fall. I catch it with the craft. The picture is yours. It has your name on the back. Easy enough to grab hold of it and stop its travel through space. The picture stops in midair. As you pick it from your own mental grip, though, you feel a stab of pain in your thumb. The sudden stop broke the glass, and you've cut your finger open on it. Gods damn it, that's what I would actually do. You wrap your thumb in tissue paper to stem the bleeding, which should help. You hear a knock on the door, and a second later it opens to admit Cassowary Chen, another first-year associate at Varka Nebuchadnezzar Stone. She started a week ago, same as you, and for both of you the last 7 days have been a solid wall of training. She's borne it well, better than you feel you have. Like you, Cass wears a dark gray skirt suit. She's intense, 5'5" or so, dark hair, expressive features, given to sharp, broad gestures with her hands while talking. She glances down at your thumb with concern. Are you okay, Verlish? Oh, it's nothing. She looks skeptical. Nothing, huh? Well. Anyway, she says, Pat and I thought we might meet for dinner before this casino night orientation thing. Pre-game a little. You want to come? I'd love to. You're going to that. Why not just the two of us? Maybe too much too soon? I'd say I'd love to. Great. She shoots you a thumbs up and scribbles down the address of a bar not far from casino night. We'll meet there at 7, okay? Then she's gone in a flare of jacket and skirt and clicking heels. If you want to meet her by 7, you'd best get home. You have some work to do. You're still living out of boxes, and it would be nice to stop that one of these days. You have barely enough time to get home, unpack a little, and return. Lucky for you that it's still the first week of training. In a month, once the work picks up, you doubt you'll ever again see a sunset that's not filtered through glass. Too many dead men to be raised, gods to be wrestled, laws of reality to be violated. You know, the usual life of a craftsman. Home waits, though, for now. And where is home, anyway? Rent's higher closer to the office, but the closer you are, the shorter the commute. And short commutes mean more sleep, which makes everything in life easier. Yeah, as close as I can get to the office. Downtown Chicago is a pricey place, but this job will take enough of your life without you having to sacrifice more of it to a daily commute, even if you feel like your landlord is vampiric scum. Not that you have anything against vampires, mind. Salt of the earth. Well, not literally. You walk home along downtown steel canyons and soon reach Castile Towers, an Art Deco titan of steel and concrete, sides decorated with aluminum thunderbolts and brass suns. The lobby's all plush cushion and chrome. Not bad at all. The elevator doesn't even whir as it drags you up to your 14th floor apartment. Speaking of rent and commutes and similar topics, what kind of life are you living exactly? By which I mean, when you left the hidden schools to embark on this path of high thaumaturgy, you were carrying about 200,000 thaums in debt. Currently, your soul's only worth about 1747. Great. Your salary's 160,000 thaums, let's say 100,000 after all your various fees and obligations to the city of Shakar are handled. Debt obviously is debt. The hidden schools lay claim to your soul and all its future products. As long as you carry this debt, you'll never be free. Mad necromancers can and will hunt you to the ends of the earth. So that said, how much of your salary, after you take care of rent and living expenses, goes toward debt, and how much of it is yours to spend? I'd say there's no sense making myself miserable. I'll balance debt repayment with my own wants and needs. Your apartment is a mess of boxes, piles by the door, in the hall, in the center of the room. You have a bed and pillows, but that's the limit. Everything else is cardboard and packing tape. You glance ruefully at your watch, set down your briefcase, and start unpacking. At this rate, you might have time to do something other than unpack and go to firm functions sometime around 2 months from now, though that's an optimistic estimate. You manifest a knife out of your own soul stuff and start tearing open boxes. You'd have used something more prosaic, but your knives and scissors are, of course, packed. Damn it. You haven't looked at your watch in a while when you hear a knock on the door. Answering it, chain in place, of course, you discover, to your surprise, Ashley Wakefield. You haven't seen Wakefield since graduation. You sort of hope never to see her again. Ash Wakefield of the Southern Wakefields, the scion of a high family, and everyone in the hidden schools knew it. Affluent, blonde, brilliant, and sculpted out of marble. Metaphorically, though you never got close enough to check. Kelletherus Albrecht & Au, one of the world's most prestigious craft firms, hired Wakefield straight out of the hidden schools as an associate in their Chicago office, and she made certain everyone knew. Perhaps he was just excited. That would be a charitable way to look at it. Canon, she says. It's been quite a while. Since we're both going to this party, I decided I might as well visit another lonely and bereft graduate in this dismal city. It doesn't seem right to keep Wakefield waiting outside, so you undo the lock on the door, step aside, and let her in. She glances around the piles of boxes without betraying the slightest hint of disdain. Wakefield conveys disdain quite well enough without having to betray it. See anything you like? Unlikely, though there's always a chance for surprise. Wakefield shrugs. Wakefield turns on her heel to face you and spreads her arm wide. I came to invite you to dinner. I've been forced to attend this particular brand of inter-firm madness, and drinks and a vague excuse for intelligent conversation might provide an appropriate stimulant for the early evening. I'm meeting some friends for dinner. You're welcome to come. Flattering, Wakefield says. Much as I would relish being immersed in your social pool, and from her tone of her voice you can see she means the shallow kind with cattails around the edge, a vague green scum on top, and an unpleasant stench hanging about. Nice lady. I shall keep my own company. Another time, perhaps. Another time, you say, and escort her to the door. You arrive at the Horseshoe a few minutes after 7 and shoulder your way through the barside crowd past the hostess's stand into the dining area. Fortunately, you see Cass before the hostess catches up with you. She half stands, waves, and smiles. Pat turns too and smiles even broader, but he doesn't stand, doesn't wave. He's a big guy, a slow mover, but smart. Older than you and Cass too, old for an associate. Dignified, short curly hair, dark skin, Iskari cuffs on his pressed shirts. He has a family even, from what you've heard. A wife at home and a kid on the way. The waitress swings by. What do you have? Tea. I'll get right on that. You drink and eat and talk, and before long the conversation turns, as it always does, to work. This time the subject is goals, and specifically Cass Chen's lack of them. I don't know, she says. Working for the firm develops skills and connections and all that. But in the end, so much of what we do is abstract thaumaturgics. It doesn't connect to people, the human lives. What does it matter if a concern recognizes an extra % of profit? To the many who work for that concern, Pat Nagabe replies, an extra % of profit or a fraction of it might matter a great deal. And regardless, we must think of our own lives and careers before we ponder abstract injustice. It is enough, I think, to care for our families and for those close to us. When the world's suffering, Chen shakes her head. What do you think, Verlish? What do you want out of your work with the firm? I'd like to give something back to the world, if I can. But what, Pat says, can you give? Such a statement strikes me as dangerously vague. Many of the early missionary forces into the glebe, believed they came to spread the virtues of the various gods. They brought great destruction on the peoples they found there. My people. I don't mean conquest, you say. There's war in the world, poverty, starvation, and we have power to call water from a clear sky, to bring the dead to life, to ride the lightning and quake the earth. There must be something we can do, something real. That's just what I mean. Cass almost spills her beer, but you catch it. There's a light in her black eyes. We could do something. We could change the world. Change it, Pat says. Into what? I, Pat says, will make partner. Once I've established a place for myself and my family in this city, then my children can concern themselves with personal gratification, not to mention this nebulous giving something back with which Cassaway seems so concerned. Now you're just being mean, Cass says, and it's not like I don't want to succeed. I just think there's more we're supposed to do here than try to get as big as we can until we explode. Pat raises his beer in a salute. Bigger is better. You know what I mean, Cass says. Not really. The conversation spins on for a while, but time's wasting and you're all more than fashionably late already. You get the check and head out to casino night. Varkath Nebuchadnezzar, Kelletherus Albrecht & Au, and a few other firms have rented out a swanky waterfront restaurant. A chandelier dangles from thin gold chains over a room swarming with craftsmen and craftswomen clad in pinstripes and slick silk. Cocktail glasses clink. Dice thud and roll over green felt tables. Everywhere you hear the flushed bird sound of shuffled cards. Outside and overhead, a few stars have survived the onslaught of the city lights. They glitter over the black waters of the lake. You wander the floor for a moment to take everything in and score a drink from the bar. When you turn back, you take inventory of the room. The ever-practical Pat Nagabe is playing blackjack, the best odds on the floor given perfect play. Cass Chen flits from conversation to conversation. She's on her second cocktail of the night, not counting her dinner's drinks. This may not end well for her. Ashley Wakefield should be milling with the rest of the KA crowd, standoffish and superior as always, but she's not. You find her at one of the poker tables, seated next to... oh, gods. That skeleton in green with the hands of cold iron and the glyphs burning on the pate of his bared skull and the mask of cured leather. That's Golan Varkath. As in, the named partner Golan Varkath. You've seen his portrait, but you've never seen him in person before. So what do you do next? I'm going to mill around for a while. Talk to people. You wander for the duration of a drink, chatting with co-workers and advisors. You exchange a few pleasant words with Vega, a senior associate on the fast track to promotion or destruction, between throws of craps. You catch up with Cass briefly before she whisks off on her own version of the social dance. Before long, you can sense the beating heart of the party under the decor and elegance. There are real people here, which is nice. So what do you do next? Let's find a true test of my mental fortitude. Roulette, craps, several variations of blackjack, tarocco, sparrows, and of course poker. Let's rule out roulette first, as a game of pure chance with odds in the house's favor. It's only here because people like the sound of the wheel. Craps, arcane betting aside, is less a game of the mind than a game of the dice. Blackjack has structure and one can win, but over a long period of time, and then only if one is quite careful. Tarocco, well, you don't have that kind of time. You never learn sparrows, though from what you're given to understand, it's something like gin, only with tiles. Which brings you back to poker, and Varkath, and Wakefield. Oh well, stealing their souls probably won't get you in too much trouble at work. Probably. Alright, poker table. You join Varkath, Wakefield, and a few other monsters at the table. The goddess of the game hovers above the felt, shifting and glorious, calling each player in turn to his or her destruction. No sense waiting, you sit down. Wakefield looks up from the cards. Decided to button up your trousers and play in the big leagues? I say nothing and let the dealer deal me in. Varkath says nothing, neither does anyone else. The big blind this deal is a craftswoman who's replaced her skin with scales, and the little blind's Varkath. You glance at your cards when the bet comes around to you and raise. What's your plan for the evening? Here to talk more than to play. You make small talk. You play, sure, but you don't take many risks, nor do you try anything particularly ambitious. You aim for rapport. People laugh at your jokes. You lose hand after hand, but once in a while you dig in and pull yourself out of a hole. By the end of the night, even Varkath seems to appreciate your presence. The game breaks by unseen agreement, and the goddess returns your souls. The dance of cards is done. You rise, stretching against tense muscles, and stagger off to the bar for a drink. Before you travel far, though, you hear a voice behind you, harsh and melodic in weird directions, like a house key scraped over a violin string. "Mr. Cannon, a pleasure to play with you." You turn and see Varkath. "Sir." His mask is painted to resemble a young man's face, perhaps his from a long-vanished youth. You think the mask's made of cowhide. You fervently hope it's made of cowhide. "Laughter, trust, and companionship are three things that will never turn a knife from your throat." I got what I wanted. "There is virtue in desire," he says, "even if it is a limited sort of virtue." He turns away, leaving you alone. Yeah, suck it, skeleton face. You feel exhausted. Long day, long night, and more long days to come. Many more of them if this life works out the way you've planned. Chen and Pat are talking at the edge of the dance floor. They look like they're ready to go. Meanwhile, the dance itself is heating up, and you see some people there you wouldn't mind heating up as well. And there's always the bar. Not to mention your bed, though it seems so far away now. Let's see what we can do on that dance floor. You grab a drink first, then hit the dance floor, spinning and shouting and twisting along with the music. You find some good partners. You find some bad partners. But you do find partners, and the rest of the night scintillates and tumbles like broken glass down a dark well. Very cool. So, you died, 15 points. There's 31 achievements. Look at all these. Interesting. So that's kind of neat. I think I'm going to call that there because I want to make sure that I give myself time to read some of the Ed Crown Post stories. But what do people think of this game? So far, these are my stats. So I've had 69% charm, 28% craft, 55% cunning, 27% determination, 69% sleep, socialite 64%, gunner 36%. And I assume these are the connections. So far, Wakefield is more than Chen, is more than Varkath, Vega, or Nagabe, Nebuchadnezzar, and Stone. So that's interesting. Yeah. It's kind of neat. It's kind of an interesting game, I think. The choice games are always interesting. And the choice of robots, actually, that we played that a few years ago, which I have listed on, which I have somewhere on my YouTube channel, was really kind of cool as well. I mean, no graphics, so there's a lot of talking. You know, there's a lot of speaking, but yeah. And the fact that it's Max Gladstone, that's really cool. Because I know Max, as I say, I've been on panels with him. I did a signing with him, actually, and at Gen Con. And, of course, he wrote the book, This Is How You Lose the Time War, with Amal El-Mutar. And as I told you folks, I thought that's excellent, excellent book. Really good book, This Is How You Lose the Time War. So, good stuff. All right. So, all right, we will come back to this at some point in the future. So now the time has come, folks, for our reading. And that means that I'm going to... Yeah, it really does. Well, Max is a good writer. I mean, that's really why. All right. I am going to stop the recording and then restart it so that we can start it anew.